Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the peak-to-peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
The song you are currently listening to is called The Bonnie Swans, and it was originally composed by Lorena McKennitt, but is performed here by the Gael. More specifically, Arwen and the Gael, as they have labeled themselves to release their most recent album, Arwen and the Gael World Tour, which you can stream wherever you get your music.
Oh sister, pray lend me your hand. Hey, hey, ho, and they bonny go, and I will give you house and land. The swans, they swim so bonny, oh, I'll give you...
Hello, my name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to this week's Retrospective Wednesday edition of the Mountaineer Podcast, where I take you back to interviews that I didn't get to release at the time that I initially conducted them. Sorry once again that this podcast episode is out very late today. This podcast episode has materialized way differently than I initially expected it to. More on that later on in the episode, but we've got a smattering of guests for you this week. Our first guest, do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Yeah, I am Kylie Brock. I'm a local here in the Netherlands area. I live on Sugarloaf. Been a musician for as long as I can remember, since being on a church stage with my mom. Yeah, I've grown up around the music industry for many years, and it's been a place where I feel like it's home, feel like it's safe, feel like it's kind of a language that everybody can all speak. Yeah.
And when I promoted you last, you were about to perform at the Netherlands Farmers Market, weren't you?
Yes, I am. I will be performing on the 20th, and I'm very excited. Very excited just for the opportunity itself.
To clarify, Kylie performed at the Netherlands Farmers Market on August 20th, 2023. So how exactly did your musical journey begin? It sounds like you've been performing since you were a church singer.
Yeah. Right. Well, a huge musical influence has always been my mother. She sang in the church choir, and they put me up there with a little microphone. They turned me off for most of it until I got older. But yeah, this mostly just was inspired by my family. My brothers are all musically inclined, and yeah, that's kind of where it began, was just singing in the car and trying to find the note that sounds right just to like sing with my mom. And yeah, she was a huge inspiration. I've had a lot of Motown influences, a lot of soul, things like Stevie Wonder. My first cassette I ever bought was a Nat King Cole tape, and I had a huge obsession with Elvis Presley. I even one time took my dad's hair gel, snuck into the other room, and would put it on and would dance and sing along with the song. I had a lot of old school influences that kind of, I feel like, were scattered all over the place that helped shape a really solid foundation for what interests me and excites me musically. Anything from something growly to Aretha Franklin or soulful, you know, as Ella. Everything in between gets me so excited.
So you've been writing your own songs as well?
Yes, I do that. I haven't been performing them live mostly. I'm just now kind of dipping my toe into that, kind of feeling at the waters. Got a lot of great feedback. But yeah, I mostly do my own spin-off of a lot of covers with a few of my own scattered in there.
How long have you been writing your own songs?
Anytime there's a monumental shift in my life, I feel like that's whenever I find myself with a pen and paper. That's when I have to have that outlet. May it be from poetry that turns into a song, or just a thought, or something that just keeps repeating in my head. I don't know why that it's kind of been an outlet for me, but that's what it's manifested as through the years. I mean, I first started doing that probably when I was like 8 years old, to be honest. That's close to when I started playing piano for the first time and started dabbling. Yeah. It's wild to think about how many other outlets I've had in my life and how that one has just always been consistent through all these years.
What sticks out to you the most about performing live and performing all of this music in front of an audience?
Oh, man. The connection is absolutely electric. I mean, that's what inspires me to keep on. And whenever I see that somebody's been touched, or it brings me joy, but it also allows a level of connection that wouldn't have happened before without that breakthrough. My vulnerability and my voice and my words, I mean, it has been a struggle for me to even be on that level with an audience for so long, and to finally be able to share that vulnerability, all it does is just encourage more vulnerability from others is what I see. And it's like a mirror that gets held up, it feels like, and I feel like people feel more seen by opening that level of intimacy up. And it just overwhelms me with gratitude. And I don't even know how else to explain it other than it's just pure magic. And that itself is what helps me overcome any kind of insecurities or a doubt or feeling like I might not hit a note or something like that. It all feels so silly whenever I think about the connection that it's brought me and the stories and the vulnerability I hear from the audience by the end of a gig or even just like a night at a party.
Is there anything that you hope audience members will be able to take away from your shows when they come and see you?
I hope that people have fun. I hope that people have a little escape and can feel silly and playful, but also feel softened and feel like some kind of intimacy was reached. Yeah, a little heart opening, if you will.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on to our next set of guests?
I haven't done an interview before, so I'm not sure. Other than I'm just really grateful for the opportunity, and this community has changed my entire life. And I feel that being able to give, like my talent, I wouldn't even say my talent, just to be able to give back to the community in this way is such an honor for me. And it has a lot of feedback, and I feel that whenever I hear my friends play music or create their own art, it really brings this town to life. And I'm so humbled and so grateful to be a part of it. That's it.
Thank you so much to Kylie for coming on board and joining us for the podcast, even though I didn't get to air this interview for a long time after we conducted it. I initially conducted this interview on August 2nd, 2023, and promoted her in the Music of the Mountains column for the August 10th, 2023 edition of The Mountain Ear. So be sure to check out that edition of the paper and that article to learn more about Kylie Brock as a musician. Kylie does not have any shows currently scheduled in the Peak to Peak area, nor does she have any music officially released. That is why I'm not going to be using any music of hers for the intro, outro, or ad break of this episode of the podcast. However, keep an eye out for her when she performs next because she'll be performing solo or possibly with her band Kylie and Friends. And now for our next set of guests. Do you all mind introducing yourselves real quick?
I'm Laura Fisher of Eldora. Debbie Smiley of Netherlands. Yeah. And I'm Phylleri Ball.
And I'm Bill Ikler from Netherlands. And Laura plays hammered dulcimer, and Debbie plays fiddle. Phylleri Ball plays two different accordions and a bodhran, that's the Irish drum, and I play guitar.
I could not believe that I actually interviewed 4 people at the same time on one podcast interview. I have never interviewed so many guests before, but I am so happy that I was able to get almost every member of the Gael on board for this particular podcast interview, and that I am able to air it now, even though they're currently not performing in the Peak to Peak area. At the time that I promoted you guys, though, you were about to perform at the Very Nice Brewing Company, huh?
That's correct.
So how did the Gael get started as a band in the first place?
Before we get to that, we're going to be joined by our vocalist on the 17th, Arwen Ek. Arwen and the Gael that night.
Just to clarify the date again, the Gael ended up performing at the Very Nice Brewing Company on Friday, March 17th, 2023, which also happened to be St. Patrick's Day.
You can tell it.
So somewhere, I don't know, when was the year we were doing like a jam?
2014 or so. Yeah.
Maybe a little before that. And that evolved into, we were just going to a bluegrass jam, mostly an old-timey. And that evolved into a group called Live Music because we didn't really have a name, but when we would play gigs, they said that there would be live music. So I think Mary, who was our fiddler at the time, decided to call us Live Music. And that went on for, a couple years?
Yeah, probably.
And
then we kind of spun off of that.
Yeah, but somewhere along when did we really start getting into Celtic music? Somewhere in there.
Yeah, because you were Celtic by the time I met you.
Yeah, kind of evolved from playing bluegrass and old-timey. And then we started picking up a lot of different songs. So we call our group Celtic Eclectic, sort of our genre.
We've been playing together as the 4 of us, we think, since 2016. Yeah.
And Arwen joined somewhere along the line, not too far after that.
We'll go back to 2016. It was just a 3, we evolved to be 4 of us.
Yeah.
Arwen came to a gig and said, you guys need a vocalist. And we're like, are you volunteering? And she said yes.
And so I asked Arwen to come up to my house and do kind of an audition because we couldn't hear her sing that night at the gig. So she started singing a song, and within 5 seconds, I just kind of went, you're hired. She was so good. So that's how Arwen came to join the group.
She's not always with us, but special occasions. Especially Irish occasions. Yeah.
What about playing Celtic music stuck out to you and joined you together as a group?
I would say Celtic music is really melodic, heavy on melody and rhythm.
It's happy. It's happy dancing music. It lends itself to playing St. Patrick's Day.
Is there a particular aspect of performing live that you guys particularly enjoy?
The audience participation. Yeah. When people get up and dance, we know we're doing a good job. Audience appreciation, too.
Yeah.
When they're enthusiastic for what we're playing, it just juices us up.
Is there anything that you hope audience members took away from your shows when they came to see you?
I'd say the energy.
Happiness, a good time.
Yeah.
Did you guys perform originals, covers, or a mix of both?
It's a lot of, we won't call it classical, but it's
Traditional folk.
Traditional folk song, not really folk. Traditional Celtic and eclectic tunes that are played across the country in jam sessions by a lot of different instrumentalists.
But we also do a lot of contemporary instrumental music. Some of it sounds traditional, but a lot of it is written like within the last 20 years. So we like playing a lot of that kind of repertoire. And then when we were playing with Arwen, she is so talented. We do a bossa nova tune that she sings in Portuguese. And we also do a tune, an old Ukrainian cabaret tune called Dark Eyes, and she sings that in Russian and French and English, one verse each. So that's where the kind of eclectic comes in, is we do a lot of different kind of tunes with Arwen.
A lot of the tunes are played at contra dances across the country as well, and that would be the root of those tunes.
Right.
Right, at Phylleri, you played in a contra group, right? You played for contra dance?
Yeah, I played in a Celtic group in Pennsylvania for 17 years before I moved to Colorado. And so we played primarily Celtic and a lot of the contra dances. I was the keyboard backup for the contra dance music.
And a lot of our repertoire comes from music that dulcimer players in the region play. And I brought that repertoire to the group, tunes that both hammered and mountain dulcimer players play.
We'll come back to the group that Phylleri was a part of a little bit later. But before we get to that, what were the rest of your musical journeys individually?
Oh, for me, rock and roll. Beatles, The Byrds, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. That's me. And folk.
I hadn't played any music since I was a teenager, and I played piano and flute. And when I was 44, I heard Bonnie Carroll's dulcimer group play, and I said, when the world stops and I get off, I want to learn to play that. And my husband bought me a dulcimer for Christmas that year, and I learned.
Oh, I played violin as a child and dropped it for 25 years and then picked it up again in about 2009 and met this group in a jam and started playing their kind of music and really loved the Celtic stuff. So
instead of saying when I was 44, say in 2004. They can do the math themselves.
Started playing classical piano as a young child, and by the time I was a teenager, I was doing more folk, and by the time I hit college, I was playing banjo in an old-timey group, and by the time I had children, I started playing Celtic music for contra dances in Portland, Oregon, on the accordion at that time. When I moved to Fort Collins, then I was a keyboard backup for a Celtic group that we played for contra dances and other things. And when I moved to Pennsylvania, I was primarily piano keyboard backup for contra dance music. And then when I moved here, because as I aged, hauling that darn keyboard around was pretty tough, and I started returning back to my roots of the accordion, which I played as a kid, and had added in the bodhran. So I've played a lot of different instruments, but I'd say Celtic music has been my main focus for over 25 years.
And Arwen isn't here today, but her background, I know she played in a Led Zeppelin cover band for a while, and she also had a solo singer-songwriter stint for a while. And so we played this medley of Stairway to Heaven and an Irish tune, and you just kind of have to hear it for it to make sense. But we have some fun with that. And we've also done covers of Crazy by Gnarls Barkley and
River by
Joni Mitchell. Yeah, so it depends, if we're doing a holiday, Christmas, we have a whole repertoire for that, and etc.
Again, we'll come back to that Led Zeppelin cover band a little bit later. Did you have any particular songs that you all like to perform?
The names won't mean anything to most people.
Glass Island.
Glass Island. Reels and jigs and
waltzes, hornpipes,
ballads,
airs.
Yeah.
You want to play stuff that gets the energy of the room going.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
So the Gael is Gaelic for forest dwellers, which seems appropriate for us. We all live in the greater Netherlands area.
Oh, yeah. And also we have one CD that was produced a few years ago, and we're almost finished with recording our second album, and we're going to produce that on CD and also streaming. And the second CD features Arwen quite a bit. So probably sometime late spring or summer we'll have a release party for that.
And we play the Very Nice Brewery generally every third Thursday. The third Thursday of every month from 6 to 8.
Except for St. Patrick's Day, we're going to be on Friday, March 17th, to be actually on St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
We're hoping this will come out that week before, like March 8th.
Thank you so much to Debbie, Phylleri, Bill, and Laura for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. Once again, even though this episode was incredibly late coming out. If you want to learn more about the Gael and read the original article that I wrote for them for this interview that we conducted on February 14th, that's right, Valentine's Day 2023, you can check out the Music of the Mountains column that I wrote for the Gael for the March 2nd, 2023 edition of the Mountain Ear. Even though the Gael is not currently performing in the Peak to Peak area, you can stream their album Arwen and the Gael World Tour wherever you get your music. They're under Arwen and the Gael, not just the Gael. They credit Arwen as well. So be sure to check that album out wherever you get your music. As far as I can tell, their first album, which seems to have been self-titled, is no longer available. I couldn't help but feel bad, even in the original promotion of the Gael back in 2023, that there was still a slight perspective missing. It was cool having most of the members of the band on board for the podcast interview, but of course, there was still one perspective that was completely missing. So, today, that's right, the day that I am airing this podcast, July 17th, 2024, I ended up doing a surprise interview and bringing on a surprise guest. Stay tuned for that surprise interview after the ad break. Here's an ozone tip for you. Work remotely. Skip the commute. Set the summer trend. Ditch your commute to reduce ground level ozone. Ozone, created from pollutants like car exhaust, is completely invisible, and yet it is the Front Range's biggest air quality issue and a leading cause of respiratory problems. Drive less, sleep more, breathe easier. Know when it matters most. Here's Kelsey Simpkins from the Regional Air Quality Council to let you know how you can sign up for ozone alerts.
You can go to our website at simplestepsbetterair.org, or you can text 21000 to Better Air CO. All this information, again, is on our website to sign up for these email or text alerts and help understand the context of when ozone is worse and what you can do about it. And especially if you have a lung issue or you're really looking to protect your health, then you can get these really timely alerts.
To learn more about the Regional Air Quality Council and some of the programs that they host, check out our podcast episode featuring Kelsey Simpkins. Music credits will be given at the end of the episode. Welcome back! And now for our final interview of the week, one that honestly even I wasn't expecting to have on the podcast, our final guest for this Wednesday. Do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
Sure. My name is Arwen Ek. Nice to meet you.
And you were the vocalist for the Gael.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I met Bill Ikler probably around the time when I first moved up here, or maybe a few years later. But I saw the Gael. The first time I saw the Gael would have been 2017, I think. They were playing a benefit for the Netherlands Food Pantry at the Caribou Room, and it was a 5-piece instrumental group, and so that's when I first met Bill. So it was a great show, and I love Irish music. I was brought up with Irish music, and so it's got that sentimental flavor for me in my life, and it was a great show, beautifully performed, and the Gael has been playing and performing and has had other singers and put out other albums before. And I was talking to Bill after the show, and I said, Bill, I didn't even know you were a musician, and you play this wonderful music. And in my not-so-humble opinion, I think you guys really need a singer. To which Bill replied, well, are you volunteering for the job? And I said, yes. So that's how that started.
Bill also talked about the fact that you ended up auditioning after you ended up talking to the band at first. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that audition?
I have no memory of that, but that's probably how it happened. I would take Bill's word for it, for sure.
Fair enough. But in the meantime, clearly this was not your first stint as a vocalist. Bill mentioned earlier that you were a part of a Led Zeppelin cover band. What was the name of that band?
So, yes, Old Soul was our name, and that's what brought me up the mountain, actually. I was living in Boulder. So, yeah, that's what brought me up the mountain. I was living in Boulder, and my first husband was a brilliant guitar player, and we got together on Pearl Street and just started messing around and just pulling songs out of our hat, and people were throwing $20 bills in our guitar case, because it turns out we were pretty good performing together. So we put together a set of rock and roll, blues, mostly Led Zeppelin covers, and called ourselves Old Soul, and started playing all of the bars and music spots up here in the mountains, all the way from the mill site. We played in Allen's Park. I think we played in Gold Hill once. We played at the PI a lot. We had just little gigs all over the place. So that was the extent of it, for sure. It was a good time.
And I assume you were also a vocalist for that band, and that you've been a vocalist for a while.
Yes. So I've been singing and writing original music and also playing the guitar pretty much my whole life, ever since I was a teenager and got my first guitar. So I've definitely spent my life in music, and I studied musical theater and opera in college, as well as dance and some other things, but I was able to get some training, which also helped, and it's just a love. It's a part of my life. It's a part of who I am. So my tastes are probably pretty eclectic, right? Like from Led Zeppelin to Lorena McKennitt. But good music is just undeniable, and it's powerful and so good for the soul.
So what kind of material did you end up writing for yourself? And did you ever perform any of the music that you ended up writing with the Gael?
Yeah, so the genre of music that I was writing and performing as a solo act was mostly folk music, rock and roll, and blues. So I play some slide guitar and stuff like that. Writing Celtic music is very, very different, and definitely not one of my... I wouldn't put that on my resume. So I think once Bill and Debbie and I did a show together at Blue Owl Books, and it was maybe one or two Celtic tunes and a couple of my solo stuff with a Celtic twist, which was really fun. I loved that. I love mixing genres, actually.
It sounds like you were more than happy to perform the traditional Celtic tunes that the band had up their sleeve anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Bill is the genius behind that, because we had a rendition of Stairway to Heaven that Bill was able to compose with another traditional Irish song, and I don't remember what that song was called, except I know that it was Stairway to Heaven, because I played the intro for it. But that was a lot of fun. So Bill was always mishmashing genres and rock and roll and pop songs with traditional Celtic music, which was really, really fun. That was definitely his genius there.
I was wondering if you knew this. I tried doing independent research on my own and asking Bill, but I was not able to get a hold of Phylleri. She mentioned that she had a group of her own before joining the Gael. Do you remember what that group was called?
Yes, that was from back in Pennsylvania, where Phylleri lived before she moved out here. And the name of that group was Black Bear Crossing. And Phylleri gave me a couple of the albums that she did with that band, and they are in regular rotation in the car because my kids absolutely love that music. So,
speaking of those CDs, there are actually CDs of Black Bear Crossing that are readily accessible. You can check out the bridge and the trail wherever you get your music. But back to you, Arwen. Have you released music of your own?
Yeah, releasing music is such interesting business. I have a whole album that I recorded in a friend's basement, and then our friendship kind of fell apart, and he's got the files somewhere. I'm so sad, though, for the loss of those tracks. I've got a couple of them up on YouTube. And then in 2010, I was living as a Buddhist nun at a retreat center in Pagosa Springs. And while I was there, I recorded an album of chanting. So it's mantra chanting and traditional Tibetan folk songs that I recorded there. And that is currently out of print also. It was called Luminous Moonlight. That was a really fun project. And then in 2019, when did we do that? I got the pleasure and honor of working with another local musician out of Boulder. His name is James Marienthal. He's the founder of Silver Wave Records, and we worked with Tom Wassinger at his studios down Sugarloaf, which is also where the Gael recorded our most recent album. So that's how we got connected. And so I can see the album cover. I'm not coming up with the name. Give me 2 seconds and I'll have the name of the album for you. And so that was really fun. James plays the flute. He plays Native American flute. And for that project, I was invited to improvise. And so I don't even think there's any words per se. It's just a lot of vocalization and vowel sounds and that kind of thing. So that was a really, really fun. Oh, Speak to the Sky. There we go. And that was released in 2020. So James and I must have been in the studio in 2019 recording that. So that was a really fun project.
Much like the Gael's self-titled album that was the first album that they released under their name, I was unable to find any trace of Luminous Moonlight. So sorry about that. However, James Marienthal's album, Speak to the Sky, is available wherever you get your music. Just to double check with you though, Arwen, the Gael's first album was self-titled, right?
Probably. That was before my time. That would be a better question for Bill.
Fair enough. Just wanted to double check on that one. But I am curious, what ultimately ended up happening with the band? It sounds like you each had to go your own separate ways.
Oh, yeah. It is so bittersweet, Jamie, because I've been having some health challenges personally that have literally just completely prevented me from being able to do live performance or commit to gigs. I mean, they are very taxing energetically to perform live. I love it, and I miss it. And so I'm working on my health personally because I'm also a mom. I've got 2 young boys that are very energetic, and I also run a nonprofit, the Holistic Homestead. So I've got my hands full, and I probably just need to do less. If I could do a little bit less, I might have more stable health and energy. So I could do the things that I love, like making music. So those are my personal reasons. We had our farewell concert. When was that going to be? Back in March, I believe. Yeah, it was something like St. Patrick's Day or thereafter. And we had a great rehearsal, and I was so stoked, and I was feeling really strong, and then my health just tanked, and I couldn't even make the show. So that's on my end, and it's still very bittersweet for me. I love all those musicians. I've loved being able to play with them. Really honored to have had the opportunity to make music with those excellent musicians.
I double-checked with Arwen to make sure she was okay with me mentioning her health problems on the podcast, and this is what she had to say in response.
Actually, it's better to hear it from me because I've heard some weird rumors come back to me. And I'm like, wow, that is so far from the truth, and who told you that?
So, to make things crystal clear, Arwen is simply recovering at home. And since I forgot to do it directly on the conversation with her, on behalf of everybody on the Mountaineer staff and in the community, we wish you a smooth, if not speedy, recovery. But what happened to the other members of the band? Did they find other opportunities elsewhere?
Possibly. I honestly don't know the status of anybody else's plans, so I'm not qualified to gossip about that stuff.
I ended up looking up what happened to the Gael because I could have sworn I saw an official statement from the band at the time of the performance. And sure enough, on the Very Nice Brewing Company's performance archives, there was the official statement. They did not have their final show in March. They did have a show in March, on March 17th to be precise, but that was not their final show. They had a couple more shows after that before their final show on Thursday, May 23rd. Here's the band's official statement. Greetings, Gaelians. Sad to say, the band is doing their final show at the Very Nice Brewing Company on Thursday, May 23rd at 6 p.m. Lots of changes happening. Phylleri, our accordion and bodhran player, is planning on moving out of state, and Bill is retiring from the band. I could have sworn there were 2 members of the band moving out of state, but according to this statement, it's just 1, and 1 is simply retiring from the band. And with 1 unfortunately in ailing health, that is 3 members of the band who are ultimately unable to perform. So, unfortunately, it makes sense that it's time for the band to move on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You know, we had a really good run, and I'm so proud of the work that we did in the time that we had together. I think that's really what counts, especially in music, because it can't go on forever, right?
For sure.
The Beatles had to break up. They're just a band. They're just human.
Even though the band is no longer performing in the Peak to Peak area, are you, Arwen, still planning on performing again once your health improves?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, absolutely. Music is a part of my medicine that I was born to bring to the world, for sure. So part of my vision for current musical projects is taking me deeper into the healing aspects of music, the healing power of music, and that's also come out of the work that I've been doing with James Marientthal. And we did a house concert in Boulder last year, and we called it the Good Medicine Concert. So I've kind of launched my own new project. It's called The Savage Shaman, and I'm doing music, and I'm doing arts, and I'm doing I don't know, all of my artistic visions are coming back full circle into my life. I will be at Red Earth Herbal Gathering in a couple weekends. It's a women's only gathering in Carbondale. I'm just going actually as a participant to enjoy, but there's always music and drumming and chanting and sacred songs, mantra, and that kind of stuff. And then I've also been invited to be a part of the Bliss Sacred Chant Festival, which will be the second weekend in August, and that's in Longmont. I'm really looking forward to that, and I will be performing. It will be a very limited engagement, so I'm hoping that my energy and my health can hold out, and I'm also trying to find how the medicine can support me and support my health and my well-being, and then how I can share that gift with others.
But as you mentioned earlier, you've got other things that you're focused on now. You run the Holistic Homestead. Am I correct in assuming that you also founded the place?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I started the homestead actually in 2013, so I've been at this project for over 10 years. We incorporated in 2016. We got our nonprofit status in 2017. We started the Gilpin County Farmers Market in 2018, and then we opened the Homestead Market, so we finally have a brick-and-mortar co-op that's open to the public. Everyone can shop here 6 days a week in the heart of Gilpin County at the top of Golden Gate Canyon, and so we opened that in 2020, and I'm still here and also loving this work. It really fills my heart to feed the community and bring good, healthy food to my friends and family and neighbors.
And you mentioned earlier that you guys are in charge of the Gilpin County Farmers Market as well.
Correct, yes. We founded the Gilpin County Farmers Market in 2018, and we've been doing it every summer ever since. And so this year, I think, is already our best year ever. It just gets bigger and better every time. Every summer, it's up at the Gilpin County Rec Center. So yeah, come check it out, first Saturday of every month.
I ended up accidentally talking over Arwen when she mentioned that the months that the farmers market is ongoing are from June to October. It is not every month this year, of course. It is just between the months of June and October. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Arwen, before we sign off for the week?
I could add safely, I think, that while the Gael isn't officially doing, they had their regular, the Irish sessions that they would do it very nice. We're not done, because I think we're all so in love with the music that we can't just hang it up and do something else. So certainly I think there will be some smaller limited engagements or private engagements that we might offer in the future, and it's all for the love of the music, for sure.
Thank you so much to Arwen for doing this so last minute and for coming on board to lend her perspective to the podcast. I am so thrilled to have gotten the perspectives of all 5 members of the Gael for this particular podcast episode. In my opinion, it was well worth the wait. Be sure to head to the Gilpin County Farmers Market every first Saturday of the month until October. We will make sure to promote the music that is happening over there as soon as we possibly can. Of course, the next first Saturday Farmers Market will take place on Saturday, August 3rd at 250 Norton Drive in Blackhawk. You can also check out Arwen Ek on YouTube. Her YouTube name is Arwen Ek. Her YouTube username is Arwen Ek 9826, all one word. She actually hasn't posted a song since 2017. She's posted a bunch of other stuff in the meantime. But if you want to check out some of her songs, including We Were Seeds, Breakthrough, Burning Man, This Way, and Play to Lose, a lot of which were actually originals from her band Old Soul, then be sure to go to that YouTube channel. I wanted to make sure that I clarified something that Bill told me after the fact. While they may be thinking about future gigs, including a possible summer reunion, there is nothing confirmed on the books. The Gael are, as of now, not performing in the Peak to Peak area at all, but we will definitely let you know if that changes. One last thing before we completely sign off. Arwen has actually been on the podcast before. She wasn't promoting the Gael last time, though. She was promoting the Holistic Homestead. Be sure to check out episode 20 of the podcast all the way back in 2021 to hear what she has to say about the Holistic Homestead. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in for this week's Retrospective Wednesday edition of the Mountaineer Podcast, and thank you to everybody who was interviewed for this week's episode. We had 6 guests this week on the Mountaineer Podcast. That is absolutely incredible, and I am so happy that this episode turned out the way it did. Of course, I wasn't expecting it to turn out the way that it did with the last-minute interview and everything, but I am so happy that it came together the way that it did, and I hope that you guys like this episode too. If you want to share this podcast with friends, family, or whoever else you might want to share it with, be sure to head to our podcast's website at the mtnearpodcast.buzzsprout.com or from our website's podcast page at themtnear.com/the-mountain-ear-podcast and share it around with whoever you see fit. And finally, if you want to be involved in the podcast, whether it's through advertising or through an actual interview, or possibly even both, be sure to email me at media@themountaineer.com and we'll get that sorted out for you. I'll see you on Friday with our weekly Music of the Mountains episode.
Let the fires burn tonight. Let the jugs of wine get drawn.
The instrumental that you heard in the ad break is called Catharsis, and it is a fiddle tune originally composed by contemporary fiddle player Amy Kahn, but is performed here by the Gael, more specifically Arwen and the Gael, as they are labeled for their most recent album, Arwen and the Gael World Tour, which you can stream wherever you get your music. The song that you are currently listening to is from the same album. It is called Sing to the Mountain, and it was originally composed by Sage Cook and Bridget Law. If you recognize those names, that's because they are part of Elephant Revival. That's right. That's an Elephant Revival song that you're listening to with a Celtic twist given to it. If you want to listen to the full song and more, stream Arwen and the Gael World Tour wherever you get your music.
Singing songs from all around. Go and sing to the mountain. Go and sing to the moon. Go and sing just about everything. Everything is you. And let your voice go. Let it pierce through your soul.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local Peak-to-Peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.